Have you ever thought what role occupational therapy has in prison? Today, I'll be exploring just that. And to help me do that, I'm excited to share the interview that I had with Kwaku Agyemang, who's an occupational therapist from the UK that currently works in the prison setting. If you're interested in occupational therapy, this is the place for you. This show aims to explore our profession by sharing who we are and what we do. Because for us, occupational therapy is more than just a job. Hi, I'm Sarah. Welcome to OT for Life. Hey, Kwaku, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I am really excited to talk to you today. And I know that we're going to be jumping into the topic of working as an occupational therapist within the prisons. And to be honest, this is an area that I don't know much about at all. And I am just really looking forward to hearing more about it, how you work as an occupational therapist within the prisons, and also like the unique skills that we can bring to the table within this setting. So I want to know if there is a story or a moment of your work within the prison setting that really stands out to you as a practitioner.
Oh, there's many stories that I could probably tell you. But when I first started working in the prisons, and I had someone that I was working with, one of the young men I was working with, discussing with him about how he feels about himself and how previous reports might have described him as a violent young man. And he was denying it. I'm not violent. I'm not this. I'm not that. So I was like, fair enough. I'm not judging you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm just trying to understand why someone would describe you as a violent young man if you don't feel like you're violent or you've never displayed anything which might be seen as violence. Yeah, so he got quite upset, or maybe not even upset, to be honest. He was very much not in agreement with what we were saying. So we sort of cut the session short because I didn't want to keep going over the same topic over and over again. So we left the room. Literally 2 seconds later, he started fighting someone. Literally got out of the room and started fighting someone that he had issues with. And I was thinking to myself, so you telling me that you're not violent, but you clearly engage in violent activities. But then I had the understanding that actually the violence is probably so normalized to him that he doesn't see it as violence. He just sees it as one of his things that he does. And we all know when we talk about one of the things that we do as occupations, it becomes a norm to us. So when someone else is trying to say that we're going to put this label on it, you're thinking that violence is when I watch TV and people are shooting each other and real fights and gangs and all this kind of stuff. But even though I probably do that kind of stuff, it doesn't really apply to me. So that was a big moment in my career so far that made me think before I basically speak or talk to people about kind of the things that they've engaged in previously to get them into the prison setting.
Okay, you've brought up already like so many good points. And the first thing that kind of popped in my mind when you were talking was, I feel like there can be a lot of assumptions that are made about the population that you work with and about people that are in prison. And in the story that you were sharing about the guy that's like, I'm not violent, but according to all of the paperwork, according to all the documentation about this person, and according to their records, it pointed that he had been violent. Throughout your experience, can you touch on any other assumptions that you feel like have been made about the populations that you've been working with, and maybe how either your assumptions have changed or how you have helped other people kind of understand that, yes, the assumptions exist, but it might not necessarily always be true, or based on like that story that you were just sharing, like there could be another side to it.
But the main assumption I believe that people make about people in prison is that everyone in prison is bad. Everyone in prison deserves to go to some place and the keys locked away and thrown away. Every single person has got a bad attitude. Every person is just basically a horrible person. And that's an assumption that is not true. I haven't come across that so far in my work in the prison setting with the young men. Not everyone is bad. Yeah, they've maybe committed offenses which can be seen as bad, but at the same time, when you manage to sit down with an individual and talk to them and find out the reasons why maybe that led to them doing what they did, you realize that you sort of have a little bit of an understanding of it, and that is not providing an excuse for their action, which caused them to be in prison. At the same time, you have an understanding of why people do what they do. And that's the most critical thing for me to understand about individuals in prison, or for me to help others understand about individuals in prison, is that there's always, mostly, probably 90% of the time, there's always a reason why someone has done something. But there's over few occasions when people might just do the most random things and there's no real reason to it. Something is happening in their mind and they've just acted out and you just think, wow. Or someone is maybe been driving and something has gone wrong and they've knocked down someone and someone has passed away and they've ended up in prison. That there was no reason for that. They were safe in their driving. It's just something has happened and you have to go by the law. When something like that happens, that you're going to have to be going to a locked environment in the prison to serve a time for a crime of breaking the law of the land, basically. And that same point does not make that person bad just because they've knocked someone over, if it makes sense. It's just an action that happened. They might not have lost a split second concentration. But the main assumption that everyone makes, as soon as you think about prison, a lot of people that have never come into that environment or have never really worked in that environment or even gone close to that environment or spoken to anyone that's ever worked in that environment or been inside that environment, is that every single person in there is bad. And that is 100% not the case.
Yeah, I feel like kind of in the same vein that people feel like everyone in there is bad. And then maybe to take it a step further, that they need to be punished for what they did. And I feel like that's a big assumption that people that are on the outside probably put onto the population of people that are in prison. And that, I think that's like a really interesting thing because we don't even know necessarily why they're in there. We're just making this generalized assumption about they're bad, therefore they need to be punished.
I think it's a historical thing about how society or the general population views anything that is deemed unlawful or reckless, because it's driven by, let's say, media, or is driven by the government, or is driven by where you come from previously, or your culture, that something, you do this, it's wrong and you need to be punished for it. And that punishment comes in different forms, in different environments, different countries, different states, wherever you want to say it, however you want to say it. So let's say a child has done something wrong, has broken a plate. The parent gets really angry and says, go and sit on the notice step. So that's already, from when you're a toddler, you're already learning that there's a punishment for something going wrong. But if you take that punishment a step further, let's say you hit the child, and it carries on that way. So everyone views it, this is wrong. So if I've done this, if I've gone and hit someone, if I've gone and punched someone in the streets, that is wrong. And you need to be punished for it. But what does that punishment look like? The lawmakers, the government have said, if I go and punch someone, let's say, and I really hurt them, that a man needs to go into prison for this length of time. And that's what happens. So everyone in the general population, look, I'm not going to punch someone, because if I punch someone, then I deserve to be in prison. That's what's going to happen to me. And what happens is that as parents or carers or anyone drives that into their children, right? So as you grow up, you have that understanding of, if I do something wrong, I get punished. As you get older, you realize that if I do something wrong, I go to prison. That's just how it works. Everyone equates wrongdoing, severe wrongdoing, to imprisonment. So that's how I view it. But actually, punishment can take loads of different forms. It doesn't just have to be prison. That's the main point. It doesn't just have to be prison, because prison is not the best place for anyone to be.
Yeah. I again, as you were talking, I think another assumption, right? Quote unquote assumption that people might have is, not only are people in prison, are they bad, but they're also like a lost cause, right? They can't be helped. Do you feel like you've heard that? Do you feel like even maybe some like professionals or something that you've worked with, they're just kind of like, yeah, like they can't be helped?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think in any work setting, not even just in the prison, any work setting, there's always people that have that view of the people that they're working with. It's very strange. It's a very strange concept, how you can work with someone and not have the hope for them to change. It's very tricky. I don't know how anyone can do it. So yeah, no, I've come across some people that work with this group of people, but just think there's no hope for this person, or I'm just doing this job for my paycheck, basically. And I'm not saying that it's not anyone I haven't come across anyone in I would say a clinical role, in some form of therapeutic role, that has this view. It's more so let's say the officers, I would say, that sometimes have this view of, this person is here for punishment, back to the punishment. So I need to just do my job and they need to serve their punishment. And that punishment is you make sure that they follow the rules in the prison, lock them behind their door, don't really interact with them on a therapeutic level so that actually they can change, because you're spending a long time in prison. That's a perfect opportunity for someone to work on themselves, especially someone that's maybe been through a lot already in their life that they need to work on. So if the only interactions they have is with someone that doesn't show any sort of empathy towards them, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to come out and see the world differently, because they're going to assume that everyone is bad in the world because you're giving them that perception that you've got no hope in me.
Yeah. I mean, you basically just took the assumption that people that are outside of prison put on people that are in prison and flipped it. And now people that are in prison, they have the assumption that everybody outside of prison doesn't care about them, doesn't want to help them, thinks that they're bad, like has all of these kind of negative characteristics because maybe it was one or a couple people that they were exposed to while they were in prison that didn't give them the time of day and didn't think that they could be saved.
I think that's just humans in general. We can't, it's not a silo. It's not a silo. Let's say every single member of staff in the prison is going to have that view of, right, we really need to help this person make the change, because that's not how the world works. So you're going to get people that have this view already. When we talked about punishment earlier, have this view already that also work in the prison, but they're doing it because they feel like they've got nothing else that they could do. But sometimes, and it's not all of them, because you get some really, really, really good, let's say prison officers who actually want people to change and would do their job, go above and beyond, actually, rather than what they're meant to just supposed to do. So you have that mix of people. It's just that the guys in the prison need to have that balance of understanding and make sure that, look, this is how the world looks like. No everyone is going to be nice to me, especially given this state that actually I'm a prisoner now. When I come out, I'm going to be called an ex-prisoner. I'm not going to be just called by my name and everything in my past is going to be wiped away. I'm going to be always an ex-criminal, an ex-prisoner. I'm always going to have that tag. So that tag comes along with other stigma and other assumptions as well. Because imagine if you're going into prison and everyone, when we talked about assumptions earlier, if everyone thinks that you're already bad, when you come out, you're still bad. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. It doesn't even matter if you've really worked hard on yourself to make those changes to yourself. People are still going to view that, but it just takes a few people to give you that chance for you to show your skills, to show that you've actually made that change to your behavior or your thinking style, or you've learned skills in prison that actually it would be really useful contributions to society. So yeah, it's just one of those things. We have to give them the wide range of people. We can't give them everyone perfect, because the world's not a perfect place. We have to all understand that.
Yeah. And I know we've kind of been generally talking about working within the prisons kind of across the board, but I know your role is even more specialized and you work with a very specific population and age range. So maybe you can share a little bit more about the specifics of your job and your role right now.
So I work with 18 to 21 year olds, very, very specific age group in country that I'm in, England. It's I don't know how it's like in other countries, how they divide the prisons up, but in England and the UK, we divide it up. We've got like juveniles, which tends to be from 15 years old to 18 years old, and then we have the next young offenders, which is from 18 to 21, and then after that you move on to the adult prison. So anyone above 21, you go into adult establishment, and that goes on to 100, however old you are when you commit your crime or wherever. So yeah, I work with 18 to 21 year olds specifically, and my prison is probably, I think, it's the only prison in the country which just holds that age group only. Other prisons hold 15 to 18, and then in the same grounds, they will have another building block with 18 to 21 year olds or 18 to 25 year olds. I think where I am is, it is. I know this for a fact. It is the only environment which holds just that group of people. And we hold percentage wise the highest number of lifers in that age population in the country. So we've got a lot of people, a lot of 18 to 21 year olds spending a life imprisonment, which is up to maybe, because of the age, when they commit a crime, they normally get maybe about up to 16 years before they entitled to parole for life. Whereas if you commit a crime when you're over the age of 18, you're considered an adult, and so you get a longer minimum sentence. So you might get up to 25 years life imprisonment before you even have a chance of parole. But when you're younger, it's a little bit different. So yeah, my age group is 18 to 21. It's quite a small prison compared to some of the other prisons around the country. And the guys range from different offenses, sexual offenses to murder, which is very, it's just, I find it fascinating every time I'm allocated a new person to work with. And I just think, wow, you're so young, but you've committed this offense. I know that doesn't make you who you are now, but you're so young. What drove you to commit this offense in the first place? But on the flip side of that, at the same time, you're so young that you've got the chance to also serve your time. We can't change that time that it's been set. Use that time wisely to sort of look at what happened to you and why you found yourself in that state, and give you that hope to make changes in the future. Because I've not come across anyone that likes being in prison. I don't think I've come across anyone that likes to be in prison. So we always talk about what do you see yourself in this in a few years' time when your sentence is up, or actually maybe that's even too far for them because they haven't had that life experience of trying out different things yet. But where do you see yourself in 5 years in prison? What do you want to be doing in prison in 5 years? Or do you want to carry on doing therapeutic work, or do you just not want to bother with that, you know? So yeah, that age group is very, very specialist, and I love working with that age group because we have got the chance to make changes to that age group.
Are most of the clients that kind of come into your therapy role, are they then coming from the other prison that is the younger group, the 15 to 18, and then they transition to yours? Or are you getting people that are committing crimes during that age period that go directly to you? Or is it a little bit of both?
I don't think anyone comes directly to us because my prison is quite, you know, now I'm talking about, I think, oh, we're doing quite good work actually in the whole prison, not just my service that I work in. But I think in our prison, you have to have a minimum of 4 years sentence before you can come to the prison. And a lot of people that might commit crimes between the ages of 18 to 21 might get a much shorter sentence. So if talking about that, that means a lot of people that come into the prison I'm in, most of them come from the juvenile estate. No one really comes directly straight to us because they've got long sentences, basically. A lot of the guys I've got very long sentences, 10 years. It's quite tough. 10 years, 15 years. When I see on someone's sentence plan and they've got coming out in 2035, and I'm looking at it thinking, 2035, that's such a long time away. And I calculate it in myself. I think, how old am I? I'm trying to count. How old would I be when this person is eventually out? But so a lot of the guys that we get do come directly from the younger juvenile estate, which creates its own issues as well, really, because if you talk about maturity levels, it changes, doesn't it? It changes with every age that you grow up. So if you're in an estate from 15 to 18, and then you come, if you're an 18-year-old in the juvenile estate, you're the most mature person there, technically, if you're going by age, you're the most mature person. But then if you come to our estate, you're the youngest person there in terms of maturity. So trying to engage in discussions or anything like that with a 21-year-old is very, very different. And that creates some problems as well. Because people want to act up. People want to act up and try build status for themselves as 18-year-olds. But you have people that have been through that whole system. They've been in prison since they're 15 and now they're 21. And you're coming in as an 18-year-old trying to take them on in their environment. It's very, very tricky. And then that's when things happen, you know, violence breaks out sometimes. Or, you know, there's always something underhand going on. As members of staff, we don't know what's going on because it's like a whole different world when you live in the prison. When we really get to know if they tell us.
Well, and I think this just goes back to kind of what you were talking about in the beginning, that if most of the clientele is coming from another facility, depending on what their experience was like at that facility, that could have a huge impact on how they are with you and now at the facility that you work at. If they had a good, trusting experience that kind of like built them up and got them to start thinking and reflecting and growing and building, that could have a tremendous result for you now to come in and foster to continue that. But if you had somebody that had a negative experience or traumatic experience or felt like they weren't able to do anything and they were bad and they weren't going to go anywhere. Now all of a sudden you're starting at a very different place with that person.
And we do get both cases. We do get that because at prison, everyone's prison experiences, from the people that I've worked with, everyone's prison experience is different. Some people automatically will never engage with professionals, quote unquote professionals in prison, because they just are not trusting of people in general, because they've had that bad experience of whatever they've done, they've been arrested by police. So whatever dealings they've had with the police is changed their mindset a little bit. Then they've gone into the criminal justice system in terms of going through the court process, not trusting people. Maybe they feel like they deserve a shorter sentence. They've been given a longer sentence, not trusting of people. So then we come along and we want to build trust with them. And and it's hard work. It's hard work, but it's possible. It is possible to build that relationship. But it just takes a lot of hard work.
There was also something else that you were talking about, which I think is just it's one of those things that I love kind of thinking and reflecting about from the occupational therapy lens. But you had mentioned about when people come to you, you think about what led them to that point, what led them to commit the crime, what got them to the point that they are coming to you in a prison setting. But then also you look ahead of where are they going to go? What potential do they have? Yes, this happened in the past, but where can we go from here? And reflecting on that from the OT lens is really kind of getting to the base root of who people are. What are the occupations that they want to be doing? What are the occupations they're getting exposed to, whether positive or negative, as they're growing up, and specifically within that very pivotal maturation stage as a kid, yes, moving into an adult. And it really just highlights, we know this as occupational therapy practitioners. We know the importance of meaningful activity and engagement, but I can just see working within this setting, how it just stands out even more of the importance of engaging in something that's meaningful, and also understanding the how and why of the occupations and the activities that led them there, but then also shifting and tweaking that moving forward in their life.
This is the issue. This is the issue. And this is, if anyone is interested in working with this age group in the prison, you really have to understand that age group, perhaps growing up, they have not been exposed to trying out a load of different occupations. So if I think about myself and the age that I am now, I've done so many different things in my life. But if you're going to put a 15-year-old in prison, 15 years old, I don't know how much they've done in their life. If you think about it, really, how much can a 15-year-old do? You can't drive. You can't go to certain places. So when you come into prison at a certain age, your life basically stops. So the only thing that you know is what you were doing before you came to prison. And that's what you hold meaning to and you hold value to. So if you were engaging in, let's say, street robberies, you found that adrenaline rush. That's what gave you that buzz, that gave you that rush. So me coming along and saying, oh, let's see if we can try something else that will give you that same buzz. They will be a bit hesitant to try it. They eventually maybe try it out, but trying to find different occupations that give them the same response to what they were doing, that's the hardest thing to do in the environment that we're in. But you always have to try to expose them to new occupations, because the occupations they were engaging in before, which they felt had meaning to and values to, which is important to them, is what's got them into trouble. And you don't want them to leave prison and then go back to engage in it again and then come back to prison, because that is not hopeful. Some people might like that, but I honestly, like I said before, I've never come across anyone that actually likes being in prison, enjoys being in prison. Maybe when you're there, you adapt to it, but truly to say that you enjoy being in prison, I've not heard anyone say that before. So trying to expose them to as many different relationships as possible, trying to expose them to different activities as possible in prison, ultimately give them the sense that, look, I can do this when I come out. I can become a mechanic, a bicycle mechanic, or I can become, a barber when I come out. I don't have to do what I was doing before. The draw to go and engage in those things is not there anymore, because I've been exposed to something that gives me a very similar type of feeling.
Yeah. And I think another thing that probably plays into that is the social aspect of that occupation beforehand. That if they were involved in, say, gangs or the street robberies or something like that, more often than not, they're probably doing it with other people and getting that peer interaction, getting that feeling like, oh, I did something. they might not understand that what they're doing is bad, or they might not understand that like the extent of it because they're young, but they're looking up to other people and they're like, oh, they're so cool. I want to be like them. And so understanding how the social influences also play a role into the activity that they're doing, and then that the meaning that they're getting out of that activity as well.
That social draw to a group is massive. It gives you that, with that big word, self-esteem. It gives you that self-esteem, that validation. It gives you all that sense of pride, when you can do something and someone says, oh gosh, yeah, that was, see what I done to that guy? You see what I done to that guy? Like, it gives you that, sort of that adrenaline, rush, or that dopamine hit, in your mind, you feel, it makes you feel good about yourself. And who doesn't want to do something that makes them feel good? It's just one of those things. But at the same time, it's about maybe when you're so young, you get drawn in, but you don't realize that you're getting drawn in. But to stay drawn in, you have to do certain things. If you're part of a gang or you're doing it socially, you have to do certain things to keep your role in that group, and keeping doing those certain things, which might not be seen as pro-social or it's not law-abiding activities. It's what's going to end you up, bring you to prison. But you don't know anything else, because when you're in that social environment, your friends are validating how good you're feeling or how well you've done. They're praising you every single time. They're encouraging you to engage in it. Probably sometimes as well, depending on certain offenses. See, there's money involved in it. So you're getting a high level of money at such a young age. It's just fascinating. I mean, to be a 15-year-old or 18-year-old and have, let's say, 2, 3, 4 grand pounds or £1,000 in your house or in your pocket, and you can go shopping and buy anything you want. I mean, that's what the kind of self-esteem it will give you is so different to what another 14 or 15-year-old will be doing in their normal riding their bicycle in the skate park, let's say, or whatever. It's so different. So that all that stuff drives you, keeps you engaging in that occupation, because you don't know anything else, but they've validated your feelings so much, and it just makes you feel good about yourself.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, it just, with everything that you say, I'm just like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like, I wasn't thinking about that. Oh, yeah. Like, it makes sense. And once you break it down in understanding why they're doing it or what they're getting out of it, and also understanding that those activities that they're engaging in that might lead them to getting in prison have importance into their life, into building who they are, and it is meaningful to them. And so I can see like how you have to somehow maybe not validate, but like understand where they were coming from, to not just say, well, you're wrong, you're bad, you can't, like, no, like, you don't realize what you did. It's like, no, like, I understand why you were doing this, but what now can we do that will give you that exact same feeling, that meaning, that purpose in your life that can not have the negative potential of ending up in prison again or staying longer or something like that, kind of spinning it and making it positive and more beneficial to a person.
100%. And these guys, they know it. The men I work with, the young men I work with, they know it. They know that what they were doing might not be the greatest thing for them. But at the same time, they felt at the time probably they had no choice, but they had to do it. And choice is another thing. That's a whole nother topic about having, getting your choice taken away from you when on the outside you were engaging in anything out of choice. It's your choice. I can choose to go out and rob someone or anything like that, but yeah, well, you don't get that choice in prison. So what little things can be given to you so that you do have a choice in prison to maintain that? Because as soon as your choice, let's say freedom, it's basically freedom is taken away from you, your ability to make little choices every single day is taken away from you. That is massive. I mean, I just think about it this way. How stressful is it when you maybe lose your key to your house? How stressful is that you can't get into your house that you own? But these guys haven't lost their key to their house. They don't have a key. They've never had a key to their house in terms of their cell. So they cannot open the door from the inside. Once that door shuts, so that choice is already taken away from you. So you have to think about all the impacts that everything like that, their meaning, values and meanings that attach to the things that they were doing, that's gone. The choice to make decisions, that's gone. So when I meet them, I have to understand all these kind of things and then try to round it off and talk about how we cannot let that drive them further down and affect their mental state. But actually, how can we sort of form a routine for them that they can then enhance their health and well-being whilst being in prison. That is the ultimate goal. And actually, in the future, going forwards in the future, to stop or to reduce the reoffending rate for that person. Because if they are going to offend again, it's really sad, it's really bad to say, but instead of stabbing someone, you know, if you punch them, the consequences are so different. But ultimately, we don't want them to punch someone or stab someone. But again, like I said before, if it's not a perfect world, everyone reacts different to things. But to reduce the intensity of the offending is critical. But actually, if you can build them up and scaffold them with different things, different options, different ways of coping with their emotions when they're really highly aroused, or outlook on engagement in different type of activities, actually, they might not have to engage in acts of violence or robberies or anything like that to get to where they are, to feel good about themselves, you know?
I feel like in addition to the choice and the meaning and the values of their thoughts and actions and activities, I feel like another thing that also would play a really big role specifically within the work within the prisons would be that environment, and what the environment of the prison actually kind of sets up by itself, like what it kind of alludes to just being there, and then also what it limits because they are not out in the real world. They're kind of in this isolated facility that they're in, that it's also limiting their occupations and their engagement in things that they possibly could be doing. So how do you feel like the environment plays a role into your treatments as well as the impact that it would have with the population that you work with?
Well, I'll start off. There's probably about 2 or 3 layers to this question, because like for me as a member of staff coming in and out every single day, that's already like, I walk into the prison, I'm thinking to myself, whoa, every single day I walk there, I'm thinking, whoa, this is like very daunting, because you could be pulled to get searched right at the front gate, because that's how a lot of the times, let's say, contraband comes into the prison, because staff members are bringing things that they shouldn't be bringing in. And some people actually then pass them on to the prisoners, which then causes more issues. So already the physical environment is quite pressurizing for member staff. In the UK, we've got very old prisons, a very Victorian style prison. So the brickwork is very, very dated. It's very old. It's very grand. It's very imposing on people. So you walk into the prison and you've got all these big buildings, and then you walk into a wing. It's very, very busy. You've got your own little cell that you're in. So the physical environment already has an impact on you. The doors are really heavy. You have to lock every single door. Prisoners have to be behind their door at a certain time. Then there's the social environment, which is the people that they're around, prison officers, obviously education, people that engage in education, other prisoners. The wing is very loud, it's very echoey. So imagine someone with sensory issues, how they're going to experience the environment. You know, sometimes it's very, very hot. Sometimes it's very, very cold. I can't just switch on my air condition and cool down. You don't have a fan. So all these things already, I know people listening, someone listening to this thinking, they shouldn't have air conditioning anyway. They shouldn't have a fan anyway. But that's besides the point. Even if they did or didn't have, the impacts that all that kind of stuff has on a person, it's already making you uncomfortable, right? In yourself. And when you feel uncomfortable in yourself, your thinking style changes, your mindset changes. Then you have, on top of that, the members of staff and how they interact with you. So if someone is very not showing you much respect or much empathy, that already puts you at another different level of deprivation, you know. If someone is very punitive in their actions towards you, really that makes you feel more oppressed. So all these are layered up. If you don't get the opportunities to engage in all the things that you were engaging in before, let's just say, even like, let's say exercise, if they do get opportunities to engage in exercise. But if you don't get the opportunity, let's say, because the prison is in lockdown situation, well, what's that doing to your mental state? So all these things are happening. And then on top of that, you have the views of other people that's in your brain about how a man or woman, depending on where you're working, a man or woman should behave in certain situations. Likewise, thinking about the men, well, you should man up. You shouldn't show your emotions. You shouldn't ask for help. So that's another layer. So everything that's troubling you in your mind, you haven't asked for help. So who knows what you're going to do when you're eventually, maybe someone triggers you or angers you with something that they say. Maybe you might act out in violence, or you might act out in self-harm, or I don't know, you might just self-isolate in your cell and not come out and engage with anyone. And that really, we all know how loneliness can affect your mental state. So all these are layers of stuff. So the physical environment and the social environment, it's just a massive impact on someone already before they even get to work with my service to try and unpick that kind of stuff. And then bringing it back to like staff members already, like making sure that we lock our main job there before even getting to therapy is make sure that we keep the prisoners in prison, because they're there for a reason. They're there because the government and the lawmakers have said that they've done this. So we have to make sure that every single gate is locked whenever we walk through it. Because if you leave a gate locked, that potentially a prisoner somewhere is going to come and walk through it and then get to where they don't need to be. And that causes its own problems as well. So security is always on your mind, plus all the other stuff that I've just described. You have to think about it.
So how do you manage all of that you just talked about as a therapist, knowing that you are going into a facility where there are people that have committed a wide range of crimes? They are there for a reason, right? We've already talked about the assumptions, but these people, they're there for committing some sort of crime. And now the negative implications that the physical and social environment can place on the population that you're working with, plus the security. How do you manage that as a therapist? And when you get a new case, and I don't know if you actually find out what crime it is that they committed, or do you choose not to think about that? Like, how do you go about managing all of that and then being able to see the person through, even if they're acting out, they don't want to talk to you, they won't even look at you? How do you manage that as a therapist?
So in my service, we're very, very lucky. It's a very, very specialist service that we work in. So let's just quickly give you a quick overview of it. It's a joint venture between the healthcare system that we have in this country, just the NHS, and also the prison service that we have here. So they've both, let's say, put half of each money in the service to make it work. So with that we have our own prison officers that actually don't work on the wings with the young men. They're directly for us and us only. So we have clinicians like myself, a therapist like myself, and then we have prison officers. So when someone gets allocated to, let's say me, automatically they're allocated to a prison officer. And our prison officers that we have are probably, in my prison anyway, they're the most experienced in my prison. They've been there have someone that's been there for 30 years. To be in one place for 30 years, you would have met every single type of prisoner that's walked through those gates. So you know them well, and you've developed yourself to work with different people. So I've got that. We're very lucky. So everyone gets two key workers. So that's myself and then a prison officer. So the prison officer is then aware of all the security and environment and how that works and how that impacts on the prisoner initially. And then I'm coming out from the other side and thinking, how does the social environment, how their upbringing, and how has everything else affected them? So I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert in the other side and the security and I have an understanding of it, but in terms of even moving the prisoners around in the place, I can't do that. I haven't got a key to their cell. So I need my colleagues to be able to do all that with. So it's like a very much having a good relationship with colleagues for starters, and also having a good relationship with the person that we're about to work with. And we all work on the relational model. Imagine, so back to the age group again. If we are lucky enough for someone to be allocated to us, and when they come in, they are 18 years old, we've got the chance to work with them for 3 years. And to work with someone for 3 years, I mean, with anyone, knowing anyone for 3 years is amazing. You get to know them inside out. And with that, we have to see the people, the guys we work with, like every single week, once a week at least for 1 hour, to have an interaction with them. And on top of that, you could be running groups that the guys, they still come to it. So you could end up seeing someone like 3 or 4 times a week.
Oh, wow.
And that's a lot, that's a lot. And that's building up relationship. But that takes a long time. It can take a long time. Some people are really good at it. Some people crave that relationship. Some people are very resistant to it at the beginning. And so you have to, keep trying and keep engaging in different things and try low level activities for them and give them opportunities to just express themselves. Give them opportunities when they say no, it's fine. Okay, don't worry about it. I'll come back again next week if you want to have an opportunity to talk. So all this stuff you're having to think about when you first meet the person. When you first meet the person, you'd be like, well, you explain your role, you explain the service to them, And actually, it's their choice. It's a voluntary service. So it's up to them to work with us. They don't have to work with us. But I think since I've been working there, only one person has declined to work with me. I don't know about anyone else in my setting, but I've had, I don't know, probably I would say about up to 15 people that I've worked with. And only one of them, I said, no, actually, I don't really want to work with this service. So it means we're doing something right in terms of our relationships with the people, and building a relationship with someone in that environment is so crucial, because you're building up a network around them. So already you have, like myself, and then another prison officer. So you already have two people that are in your corner. On top of that, they maybe have another, obviously their family, if they've got any family support that is helping them. On top of that, maybe they have a job in the prison. That's another thing that might be helping them out. If they've got any drug issues or alcohol issues, that they've got that kind of team as well. So you layer in everything around them, you sort of building them up to a stage. Actually, you can ask for help if you need it from any one of these people. And so we're very, very fortunate in my service to have that opportunity to build those relationships with them. And that's how, as a therapist, I manage that, because I know I'm in it for the long haul. When I get someone, I'm in it from the long haul. I know we get the reports before we see them anyway. And then you have to read it because of security issues in terms of risks to you as a person, because there might be, like, you can't really be one-to-one with them. So obviously I'm not going to be in the room one-to-one with them, or they have to be escorted over to where I'm working by two officers. You need to know all these kind of things before you even sit down with them and talk to them. So I always read their case history, but that doesn't, well, that's probably a lie. I'll say that it doesn't really influence me, but it has to in some way. But I try not to let it influence me in my interactions, because I see them as a blank sheet. You tell me what you've done. I've already read all this stuff. I want to hear your version of events, because you know how reports get recreated. I can look at someone's report and says, it's easy, isn't it? Shouldn't really be doing it, but I can take things out of it and just put it on, and it just carries on. Yep. 10, 15, 20 people down the line, the report is exactly the same. But actually, no, I didn't do that. So they'll tell you, I didn't do that. But yeah, so we get to know that kind of stuff. But we always give them the option to tell us what their version. And any reports or any kind of documentation that we do with the guys, we always share with them. So that that I'm not writing something about you that is untrue. We might agree to disagree. I might write something in my formulation of what you've told me, and that you might not agree with it. Back to the very gentleman that said he wasn't violent before. I could write that this person has engaged in violence previously or whatever. He might not agree with that, but I'll say, wow, why don't we just leave it there? Why don't we just leave it there for a while, and then we add on your version to it as well? So, and then you have that balancing act of, rather than just me saying everything I believe, or rather than him saying everything he believes, because we know down the line someone's wrong. So one of us is wrong down the line. And so meeting halfway is always important. Yeah. So we're very lucky. It's all about relationships, all about building up relationships, all about looking to the long term rather than the short term.
And I feel like it's that personal connection. You said relationships. It's also understanding who these people are. And I think this goes across multiple practice areas, or all practice areas, I should say, really looking beyond like the diagnosis, or looking beyond the label, looking beyond whatever the reason is that they're there, and looking at that person as a person that has meaning and has value, and going beyond what the reason, that like specific thing that they are there for, and really being able to, I love what you said, like look forward and continue to make progress, and not just kind of get stuck on, well, you did something bad, you're not going to amount to anything. It's like, yeah, I see that, but where can you get to? Where can I help get you to this point? And the team too. I love that collaboration piece. Like, the facility that you're at, like that just sounds amazing, where there's so many different layers to help support people, because we as occupational therapy practitioners can't do it all. And each individual member can't do it all either. So having that collaboration to really support the people on a personal level, like that's it right there.
It's an expensive resource that we provide to the guys. But ultimately, if you think about it, this is why I do my job. I always think about it this way. If we can stop one person from going to prison, that saves that saves a lot of money for the taxpayer. It saves a lot of money for all of us, everyone that's paying taxes every day. So if we can help to stop one person from going to prison, that money alone is probably going to pay for about 5 or 6 members of staff for a year. It's a high resource. The prisons, they cost a lot of money. But at the same time, they again, we're talking about they're there for a reason because they've broken the law of the land. That's just how it works. Any of us, I always say there's always a thin line between freedom and being in prison. There's always a thin line because we don't know every single person in this world knows every single rule or every single law. So you might do something that you think is absolutely fine. You can end up in prison, which is, that's a whole different point as well. But yeah, no, it's just we're a very expensive resource, but I think it's worth it. It's worth investing in people in prisons because, again, if you think about it, especially in my age group, these guys are very, very talented and very young and very energetic. And actually, if they can come out and provide even a little bit of the enthusiasm and everything like that, passion and everything like that into the society, that will help everyone else. And also at the same point, I think myself, do I want this person to be my neighbor? Do I want this person do I want to say hello to this person when they've just moved on my street and not even think that they might have committed a horrendous crime? And that drives me to work with the guys because I know that if I can have any sort of impact on them that could make other people view them just like the way I've described, then, that's perfect because they don't want to be viewed as prisoners or bad people. And also we want to be able to trust our neighbor, with our door open, it's just one of those it's things. So that also drives me to keep doing that work, and looking at the long term and thinking about, actually, this person's got so much potential. They're probably going to be so happy in themselves, engaging in the things that they want to engage in once they leave the prison. That actually they're going to be fingers crossed, they're going to be a very, very good member of the society. And they're going to contribute just as much as I've contributed to society in their lifetime.
Okay, I have to share my reflection that I'm having right now because, like I said in the beginning of this, your practice area of working in the prisons, I'm not familiar with, but I can draw so many parallels between what you do and what I do. And me working in early intervention, working with kids that are birth to 3 years of age is a very different population than the population that you're working with. But you're saying you have the opportunity, depending on when they come to you, to work with them for 3 years. That's me too. If I get a kid right after they're born, I can work with them until they are 3 years of age. Literally, it's the same amount of time. But then also beyond that, everything that you said about this is why I do what I do. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why I do what I do. If I can go in and I can help a child and their family very early on in their life when they are going through either some sort of diagnosis, some sort of traumatic event, something that happened that has put this kid at risk or they have some sort of delay. If I can go in at the beginning and foster this relationship, collaborate with other professionals and help this child and help their family, in the long run, hopefully that means later on they don't need any services or they need less services. And then that goes into that whole financial piece that you were talking about of helping out the system as a whole. So here we are, two occupational therapists, two completely different practice areas, but the framework of what we're doing is the exact same thing. And I just think that is so cool and so fascinating because, again, I think going into this conversation, I was probably there's going to be no parallels. There's going to be nothing that's similar between you and I, but there really is. Yes, it looks different. Yes, it feels different. But the bottom line of what we're doing is occupational therapy, and that's going to be the same regardless.
Oh, 100%. This is, I was having a conversation with someone and we were talking about how you work with people in different settings. And ultimately you're looking at the framework that you get taught when you're studying, because you can't, when you're in university studying, you can't get taught about every single practice area. It's just impossible. So if you have a structure and a process of working with someone, that process you're going to do with every single person, regardless of if they are 0 to 3 years old or 99 years old. You're working with that same process and you're working with what is meaningful to that person, what the person does in their everyday to get from when they get up. Actually, not even when they get up, when they sleep and how well they sleep to going back to sleep following evening. Everything that they're doing to occupy the time, everything that they're doing that is meaningful to them, everything that they're doing to maintain their health and well-being, everything that they do in their day. So you get taught about that structure and you use that structure in every single different setting that you're in, basically. And the way I do it is, like I said, it's completely different to the way you do it. But at the same time, we're just using that same structure to get the person from A to B. And that's, well, that's occupational therapy, isn't it? Really, I best.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. Like, it's so, that is one of the things. That's why I love doing podcasts. I love talking to other practitioners because it's just hearing you talk. I'm like, I'm just so inspired and so invigorated about the profession and really like the extent and the influence that we can have in so many different practice areas. I am really curious how you actually got interested in working within the prisons and working in this practice area, because I don't even know. I think I had to have already been a practitioner when I realized that this was a potential practice area that we could work in. So where did that, how did you make that connection, and where did you find that passion that you wanted to work with this population?
So I've always worked with people in some form of a locked environment. So in my adult life. So when I was probably about 21, my background originally, when I was 18, when I went to university, I studied sports science. So I left sports science and I went to work in a mental health rehab setting and also a learning disability setting, doing sports and exercise science with them, sports and exercise with people to try help them using sports and exercise as my occupation. Now I understand it. Activity, as I understood it back then, to get people from just basically improve their health and well-being, either physically or mentally. So through that, I've always worked in people who have been deprived of things, who are locked away from society, who society makes a lot of assumptions about. So I was very fortunate to be inspired by other occupational therapists to sort of go and study the profession. So during my studies, I always wondered why people are locked up, for starters, because when you think about occupational therapy widely, especially in the UK anyway, the main thing you think about is hospital setting, acute settings. And that's, I think a lot of people understand what occupational therapists do in that setting. But on the flip side, we've got a lot of occupational therapists working in mental health settings, and in forensic units. But I always wondered, what are they doing there? What they're actually doing? what kind of work are they doing? What interventions are they doing? So when I was on university, I always sort of I would seek out the different types of placements I could go on. And then I managed to find a forensic mental health unit. And even in that, I was able to then work in the assessment unit there, which is when the guys are transferred from prison to a mental health unit to get assessed if they've got a mental health difficulty or diagnosis of some kind. So I was engaging there with prisoners and then also thinking about their mental health and well-being. So I was like, whoa, this is fascinating. So I thought, let me take a little bit of a step further and actually go into the prison and see what happens there. So it was just one of those things. When you meet people, you have to take your opportunity. So I met an occupational therapist who was working in the prison. I was like, whoa, this is just amazing. This is fantastic. I've got to get to know a little bit more about this. And then, so I spoke to this occupational therapist and I got in as a student initially. So when I got to a student, I found that this is the place I need to be. And since then, I've been there. So basically I was on an extended job interview as a student. I was really trying to prove myself because I knew that hopefully I could go back there if a job opportunity comes up. Because I was just fascinated to understand why people do what they do and how they fill their time whilst in prison. That's the connection and that's the drive that keeps me going even now. What do you do to fill your time in prison, and how can you maintain that for when you come out of prison? Because that's the change that you need to do, because what you were doing before was obviously not beneficial for you because you've ended up in prison. And that enthusiasm just keeps driving me forward. And it's just a fascinating world. I think it's opened my eyes. When I went there as a student, it really opened my eyes to the potential of a human being and how much people can be in very, very stressful situations outside of prison, which brings them into prison, and actually how people in prison, even young people in prison, manage themselves in a very, very stressful environment of a prison setting. Because it's like all the things I talked about before in terms of a physical and social environment that is stressful for anyone to be around. So how do you build up your resilience to manage in that setting? And how can you then build on that resilience to then look after yourself when you come out of the prison? I hope that answered your question.
Oh, yeah. I'm just I'm taking it all in because, yeah, this is absolutely amazing. I literally am just wow. So what would you say has been your biggest realization, maybe the biggest thing that you've learned throughout your experience within this setting?
I think biggest thing I've learned so far is to remove any sort of judgment about what people are capable of doing from meeting people. Humans are very, very complex, as we know that already, but humans can also do very, 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 very difficult and horrible and distressing things to other human beings. And you have to try to remove that judgment, but at the same time, realize that that is possible of people. And that's a very difficult thing to do. I'm not saying that I'm an expert at it, because sometimes I will read people's offenses and think, gosh, it still shocks me. But then I always want to find out why that person potentially did what they did. What in their life may have had an impact on them to do what they did. That's the biggest realization I've had, I think, just to remove the judgment from the person's crime, if it makes sense. Because I can remember when I was a student, and then, I don't think I'd ever met someone that has been in prison before, or actively, like someone I know that has been in prison. I've never met someone like that, apart from when I was a student in the forensic unit. But that's different. But actually, when someone's actually on your case, you're the one working with them, and then you've read that they committed a sexual offense, a very horrific sexual offense, or they've committed murder. I mean, it's quite difficult to remove yourself from it. But at the same time, you always have to understand what the person did. Like I talked right at the beginning about, you have to really know there's different stages of why people do what they do. But you also have to have the understanding of that people can do really, really horrible things, but not be bad people at the same time, which is very, very difficult. I've come to that realization. I think that's the biggest tip. I would just like to say that where I work is quite different to what some other occupational therapists do in different prisons. So whereas I'm working with someone on a very relational level and on a long-term basis, trying to understand them, get to know them, let them get to know me a little bit, try to basically form a relationship and model appropriate relationships. Other occupational therapists don't get the opportunity to do that because they're only really dealing with how can we help change this environment for someone who is struggling with physically. So they don't have to have that relationship. We have to have a relationship, but not to the extent that I have a relationship with them. So I know an occupational therapist who works with a much older age group who are significantly impacted by disabilities or different illnesses in their older age, whereas we have to sort of adapt the environment, put some equipment in to try help them because they can't come out of prison, but actually we need to do something that they stay safe in prison at the same time. So yeah, it's very different. So all these things I'm talking about, I'm really talking about it from my perspective. So everyone is very different.
I absolutely love that. Yes, you are coming at it from your lens and your experience and your clinical role, but I think that can be applied across any practice area, any clinician, really just looking at our clients as people. And regardless of the reason that they're coming to see us, if we can see them as people and help them get through whatever it is, whether it's an accident, whether it's a traumatic experience, whether it's being in prison, whatever the reason is that we are coming in and being a part of their lives, just bringing it back to the humanistic value that they're a human, we're a human, and we're here to help them get back to their life and get back to a meaningful and purposeful life.
That's a very good point. And I think I remember when I first got my job when I was left university the first time around, one of the first things that one of the consultants told me is that never ever lose your humanity skills, because you never think of yourself as just because you're a clinician that you're better than someone else just because you've learned something more than the person may have learned. But actually, think about it, they know more about themselves than you ever will. So one of the key advice, and you've hit up on it, is never lose your human touch. They're human, you're human. You have the same capabilities as them to do exactly the same thing. It's just that your life has gone a different path to what their life has gone. And you're trying to be by their side as their cheerleader to try sort of help them overcome the situation that they're in now in a very difficult setting. So 100% across every single practice area, anywhere that anyone works, never ever forget your human touch. That makes such a big difference to a person. You know the impact it makes on you when you get home and someone asks you, oh, I know that classic question, how's your day been? But that's a very important question because it gives you the opportunity to rant, for starters. And that's the same thing with the guys that we work with. Oh, how's your week been? Tell me how your week been. that's the opportunity to get anything off their chest that they might not feel comfortable maybe talking to their family over the phone about, or members of staff on the wing they don't feel comfortable talking to, or other prisoners who might then basically judge them for how they're feeling. So yeah, having that question, having seen that human touch, offering them a cup of tea, or drink, just to get them at ease. Never ever forget that human touch.
It's so important. And I want to switch gears for a little bit because I want to talk about your podcast and some of the things that you're up to. And I mean, I love talking to occupational therapy practitioners, but definitely when I talk to another OT podcaster, I'm like, yeah, we have this special bond because you have a show and I have a show, and your show is called OT and Chill. And I'd love for you to just take a minute to kind of explain like why you started it and what's it all about, and really kind of what your mission is with that.
So yeah, it's like you said, it's called OT and Chill. So I go back to the beginning again. So when I first started university, I sort of got involved in the student society. I went to a university called London South Bank University, which is in the heart of London. So I got involved in society there, and we'd put on conferences, we do networking, we do journal clubs, we do a load of things, loads of different activities with people, trying to organize professionals or qualified professionals to come in and talk to us. Just a load of different things we got up to. So when I left university, I was like, well, there's a void here. There's a void in my life that I'm not filling, which involves networking. Yeah, I could go to networking events, but at the same time, I've got a family, it's very difficult to do that separately because that takes away some time. So I was thinking about what is the best way for me to still talk to people about occupational therapy and still get other people to hear it and still network with other people. And I thought, podcast, that's a good shout. I was very nervous before starting because you never know what the feedback is like. At the same time, you don't want to start something and then not continue with it because there's a bit of accountability with that as well. So I just one day, I just decided one autumn last year, picked up my phone, downloaded an app and just recorded my first episode. And I thought, I've got quite a deep voice. So I was thinking, how else can I make this a little bit easy listening for everybody, or easy listening for me? So I thought, let me layer it with some music in the background because I would really, really love to have a studio where people could just come and relax with a little bit of music in the background, but we just talk and just chill out and talk about occupational therapy or anything else associated with occupational therapy. So I had that concept in my mind. So I created it, I layered some music on it, and I called it OT and Chill, which makes sense because I'm really chilling out with people and just being open and honest about what people have been engaging in. And up to now, I've released 9 episodes, which is, I never even thought I'd even get to 9 after the first one. Hearing your voice back, I think, how many people have listened to it? I get, how many people have listened to it? Is it worth me carrying on? But no, it's received fairly good feedback. And so I've decided to continue with it. And I talk about things that interest me. I'm very biased. I talk about things that interest me because if it interests me, then hopefully it will definitely be interesting to someone else. At least if I can get 10 people to listen to it, that's I've done my job, because when I've had that conversation with that person, I've found it mind blowing. I've made my notes. I'm happy. I've learned something new. So if I can then share that conversation with, like I said, 10 people at least, I'm very happy about it. And so, yeah, it's received very good feedback, and I'm very happy that I actually started it. And then at the same time, I look to someone like you, someone like Brock, Matt. There's a load of OT podcasters who have done loads and loads of episodes. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how do you guys keep the enthusiasm going? But actually, it's good to look ahead and say, these guys have achieved it, so you can work your way to achieve it as well. And there's always space. There's always space for another podcast. That's how I always think. There's always space for another podcast. So, yeah, that's my podcast in a bit of a bubble.
And if people wanted to find your podcast or connect with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, I think it's on all the major platforms. I think most of my listeners tend to come from Apple iTunes podcasts. I think most listeners go on there, but it's on Spotify, it's on Overcast, it's on everywhere that you can find it. If you go on Instagram, my Instagram tag name is OT and Chill, or one word. And on Twitter, it's OT_chill. And then, yeah, you can drop me a message, wherever you want to send me. If you want to be a guest on there, I'm always looking out for guests. If you've got something that you think is really interesting that you want to share with the world, this is a very good platform to share it, because I think people, obviously, like even on their journeys to work, anywhere like that, on their runs or on their chill out sessions, they could just have easy listening in the background. You can take something in from someone's conversation.
Completely. 100%. I totally agree with that. And I get it, because that's exactly like why I started mine and why I continue to do it. And I think we all have a unique value to bring, and kind of what you were saying in the beginning, like we're all experts in ourselves. And I think a lot of people think that they don't have anything to bring to the table, or they don't have anything new, anything special to bring to the table. And every single recording that I do, I learn so much from, and I get inspired from my guests that I bring on. And this recording is no different. Like my brain, like, I guess if you could like see it, it is just like, it's firing like crazy right now with so many ideas and reflections and just realizations. And so, yeah, I'm actually like speechless, because there's so much going on. I can't even put it into words right now. So I'm going to direct the question back to you.
Yeah.
My last question for you.
Okay.
If you only had one word to describe occupational therapy, what would it be?
It's a tough question, actually. I would say exciting. It's a very easy word, but it's exciting because the opportunities are endless. If I'm only purely talking about my practice setting, the opportunities are endless. I'm sure someone else will talk about their practice setting and probably use a similar word, because at the end of the day, we are working with individuals, and everything that individual tells us about themselves, I find it exciting, and you can work with it. Everything that individual does or wants to do that is within reason, it's exciting for me and it's exciting for that individual. So I think it's exciting and it's full of opportunities. So I would use the word exciting.
I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show today, Kwaku. This, like I said, my brain, I'm going to have to go back and reflect on this, because this has been amazing. And I am so honored that you came on and shared about your journey, shared about your experience within this practice area, and just kind of shed some light on what it looks like to be an occupational therapy practitioner working within the prisons. So thank you so much. This has really just been awesome.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Honestly, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you hear, here are 3 easy ways you can help support the show. 1. Head over to otforlife.com to find out more about any resources discussed on the show. Remember, that's OT4LYFE.com. 2. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or anyone interested in occupational therapy. 3. Subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. And while you're there, be sure to leave a review saying how much you love the show. Thanks again. I'll catch you next time, OT for Lifers. So what do you think has been your biggest maybe realization, or the biggest thing that you've learned? Hold on.
What about myself?
Yeah, hold on. I'm like, it's there. I just can't formulate the words, this is actually pretty good. This usually happens in the first 15 minutes. Okay, let me see if I can do it.
To carry on working where you are. So, but at the same, I'm digressing a little bit, but I hope that answered you. I know it's a very long-winded answer, but I hope I got to the point.
You did. And that was awesome. Literally, yeah. I am to the point now that I'm just I don't even know what to say, because there's so many thoughts going on in my head right now.
It's fascinating. I love talking about my job. I like my job. So, like I said, if I don't talk about it that well, hopefully I would have done my service a disservice, and also myself not